Jacques Cartier entered the world on December 31st, 1491, in the bustling port town of Saint-Malo, Brittany, France. The timing of his birth could not have been more fitting, on the very cusp of a new century, a century destined to unravel vast mysteries of the earth and to reconfigure the map of the world. From his earliest moments, the sound of crashing waves and the smell of salt carried through the air, surrounding the boy in a world shaped by the sea. Saint-Malo was a town of sailors, traders, and fishermen, a place where the ocean was not simply a horizon, but a livelihood and a destiny. It was here that Cartier's story began, a tale that would grow into one of daring voyages, fierce encounters, grand ambitions, and unrelenting curiosity. As a boy, Jacques wandered the quays and listened wide-eyed to sailors tell stories of distant shores, treasures, and monsters of the deep. His father was a mariner by trade, and though not wealthy, he ensured his son inherited both the skill and the hunger for exploration. The sea was more than a backdrop to Cartier's childhood. It was his school, his playground, and eventually his stage. By his teenage years, Cartier had already developed a reputation as a competent navigator, adept at reading the stars and the tides, and ambitious enough to want more than the narrow confines of Brittany's coastlines. In the late 15th and early 16th centuries, Europe was buzzing with stories of lands discovered across the Atlantic. Columbus had already reached the Americas. Vasco da Gama had rounded Africa to India, and Spain and Portugal were racing ahead in exploration. France, eager not to be left behind, sought bold men to push its own frontiers. For Jacques Cartier, this was the perfect tide to catch. During his youth and early adulthood, Cartier apprenticed under experienced sailors, joining voyages to Spain, Portugal, and along the coasts of Africa. He absorbed everything: the art of charting unknown waters, the precision of compass work, and the diplomacy required when dealing with foreign lands and foreign people. By his late 20s, he was considered more than just a sailor. He was a navigator of considerable skill. His reputation grew in maritime circles, drawing the attention of those in power who would one day entrust him with monumental tasks. In 1520, Jacques Cartier married Catherine de Grange, the daughter of a prominent shipowner and constable of Saint-Malo. This union gave Cartier not only stability, but also strong social and economic connections within the maritime community. Though little is recorded of their personal relationship, the marriage cemented Jacques' place among the city's respected families. He gained influence, resources, and recognition, all of which proved essential when he later sought royal backing for his expeditions. By the 1530s, Francis III of France was determined to expand French influence across the seas. Spain and Portugal were drawing riches from their conquests, and France demanded its share. The king sought a northern route to Asia, a mythical passage through the newly discovered lands of North America that might provide a shortcut to the fabled riches of the East. When the time came to select a man capable of leading such an expedition, Jacques Cartier's name surfaced with approval. In 1534, Cartier was commissioned by Francis I to set sail across the Atlantic in search of the passage to Asia. He was 43 years old, seasoned by decades of experience at sea, and ready to carve his name into history. Cartier's first voyage began on April 20th, 1534, with 2 ships and 61 men. After weeks at sea, he sighted the rugged coasts of Newfoundland. For the French crew, these shores seemed harsh and cold, yet Cartier pressed forward with determination. He navigated the Gulf of St. Lawrence, planting crosses to mark French claims on the land. It was on this voyage that Cartier first encountered the indigenous peoples of the region, the St. Lawrence Iroquoians. His journals describe their villages, their customs, and their hospitality. At Gaspé Bay, Cartier erected a 30-foot cross, claiming the land for France, a gesture that sparked suspicion among the indigenous leaders, who quickly realized the Europeans came not only to visit, but to possess. In a controversial act that would shape his legacy, Cartier kidnapped 2 sons of the local chief Stadacona, intending to present them to the French king as evidence of his discovery. Though the voyage did not uncover the passage to Asia, it succeeded in convincing Francis I that further exploration was worthwhile. Cartier had brought back not only maps and descriptions, but also living proof of the people inhabiting these lands. In May 1535, Jacques Cartier embarked on his second voyage, this time with 3 ships and over 100 men. Accompanying him were Stadacona's sons, now familiar with the French language and customs, who guided the expedition deeper into the heart of North America. Cartier sailed up the St. Lawrence River, a waterway that would become the defining stage of his explorations. He reached the great village of Stadacona, near present-day Quebec City, and continued onward to Hochelaga, the site of modern-day Montreal. His journals describe Hochelaga as a bustling community with large dwellings and fertile fields, a thriving society far removed from the European impression of empty wilderness. Cartier was struck by the scale and sophistication of Indigenous life, though he also viewed it through the lens of conquest and colonization. The expedition, however, faced immense challenges. The harsh Canadian winter trapped Cartier and his men in the icy river. Scurvy, the dreaded sailor's disease, struck with deadly force, killing many of the crew. Desperate, Cartier accepted help from the Indigenous people, who taught him to brew a tea from tree bark and needles that cured the sickness. This moment of exchange and survival forged a fragile bond between the two worlds. When spring arrived, Cartier returned to France, taking with him Chief Stadacona and several of his people. The chief never returned to his homeland, dying in France, a reminder of the heavy cost of these early encounters. In 1541, Cartier set sail once again, now tasked with establishing a French settlement in North America. He brought colonists, livestock, and supplies, envisioning a permanent foothold. The settlement near Stadacona was named Charlesbourg Royal. But life was brutal. The colonists faced resistance from the Indigenous people, dwindling supplies, and the unforgiving winters. Cartier believed he had discovered gold and diamonds in the area, treasures that could justify the venture. He filled his ships with the glittering stones and returned triumphantly to France, only to discover they were worthless quartz and iron pyrite, fool's gold. The dream of riches collapsed, and with it, French enthusiasm for immediate colonization waned. Charlesbourg Royal was abandoned, and Cartier's role as France's great explorer faded into obscurity.
After his failed third voyage, Jacques Cartier retired to his estate near Saint-Malo. Though he no longer sailed to distant lands, his life remained shaped by the sea. He lived quietly, managing his affairs and family until his death on September 1, 1557, at the age of 65. A plague swept through Saint-Malo around that time, and it is believed that Cartier fell victim to it. Though he died in relative obscurity, Jacques Cartier's voyages laid the foundation for France's later claims in Canada. He gave Europe some of its first detailed accounts of the St. Lawrence River,
Hochelaga, and the peoples who lived there. His name endures on maps, in Canadian history, and in the city of Montreal, which grew from the very land he once explored. Cartier's story is one of ambition and limitation, of triumphs and failures. He sought Asia and found Canada instead. He claimed land for France but could not hold it. He dreamed of gold, only to return with stones. Yet his legacy shaped the course of North American history, opening a gateway that others would later follow. Facts about Jacques Cartier. He was born on New Year's Eve, December 31st, 1491. His hometown, Saint-Malo, was famous for producing sailors and explorers. Cartier is credited with naming Canada, derived from the Iroquoian word Kanata, meaning village or settlement. He brought Indigenous guides to France, sparking curiosity about the New World. His voyages introduced Europe to the St. Lawrence River, which became a major route for exploration and trade. Cartier believed he discovered diamonds and gold in Canada, but they turned out to be worthless. He suffered from scurvy during his expeditions, and Indigenous knowledge saved his crew. Cartier's maps and journals became crucial for later explorers. He married Catherine de Grange, but had no recorded children. His final years were spent in quiet retirement, far from the seas that defined his youth. Jacques Cartier's life began with the sea and ended with the sea. Born on the edge of an ocean that seemed endless, he dared to cross it and found worlds unknown to him, worlds that would forever reshape the destiny of nations. Though he never reached Asia, though his settlements faltered, and though his gold was but glittering dust, Cartier's courage carved the path for the future of Canada and the history of exploration. His story reminds us that discovery is not always about arriving at the place we intended. It is about expanding the boundaries of what we know, daring to venture beyond the horizon, and leaving behind a mark that echoes through centuries.